outside of it. Okay, Rabbi say, okay, I'm sorry for wasting your time. I don't understand why. Maybe this is why. Let's see. Okay. Here we are. Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Today is Chav Gimel Sivan, which means it's 10 days till Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz is in 10 days exactly. Sivan has 30 days. And we've been busy here, Baruch Hashem, and in the basement. Inside Hasidus has been not resting, even though work is at rest, but Avodas HaKodesh, Baruch Hashem, has not ceased. And we've covered a lot of things. With Hashem's help, we did the Rebbe's Kapitel, which is an incredible accomplishment. It's mamish, a nes min hashamayim. It would not have happened if not for the quarantine. And we've also taught Kama V'Kama Maimorim of the Rebbe. Besides, of course, we're teaching in Yeshiva, the Derech Mitzvah and the Parsha, and all the other goodies that have been going up on a regular basis. And this is, of course, besides for the class that I teach, a lot of classes that I Bechlal don't put up. I've been busy. Adanke Meibishtim, Glibt Hashem Yisbarach. And I just finished the Rebbe's Kapitel, and I said to myself, and I can relax. And then almost as soon as those words came out of my mouth, Gimel Tammuz beckoned. And you can't do nothing for Gimel Tammuz. You just can't. Mindaf Episton. Gimel Tammuz is beckoning. And so that's what happened. It's not a complicated story. It's what happened. After resting for about a day, we're going to go back to work, Mitzvah Hashem. We're going to be doing Vata Tetzava. The summer schedule remains to be seen how it's going to be, whether I'm going to have my Shurim in 770 or not. But B'li Neder, I will be teaching Torah, because this is my life, this is my chayes. And I hope people are learning, and people are benefiting from it, and you're going to bring in the Gula Shlema V'Amitis. So the boy side, the mini Bachsidim is that every year, in preparation for Gimel Tammuz, we learn the Vata Tetzava. So we have, how many days do we have? Today is Monday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's 4. And then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of next week, that's 7. We for sure have, if all is normal. The plan is, for sure we have 7 evenings to do this Maimir. Perhaps there'll be another. Wednesday night is already Gimel Tammuz. There's Wednesday night, and of course there's Thursday night, and all of these things have to be Mesudir and Mavudir. But in the meantime, we're going to learn V'ata Tetzava. Okay? Now, of course, the story of V'ata Tetzava is that it was a Monday. I thought it was a Tuesday. It was a Monday. It was exactly 2 weeks to the day before the stroke that the Rebbe gave out the Kuntis V'ata Tetzava. Mir dacht that he didn't go to the oil that day, but I could be wrong. The Rebbe gave the Kuntisat for well over 4 hours, for a very, very, very long time. And of course, the details that revolve around the Vata Tetzava that make it special were, number one, when the Maimer was sent into the Rebbe for Hago, when the Maimer was sent into the Rebbe for editing, the Rebbe Verstetzach edited the Maimer, and then he wrote, he wrote on the Hanocha, on the transcript that he edited, that he hopes it'll have the desired effect. And if you look in the new Tatus, in the new Melukits, they have the wording of the Rebbe that the Rebbe wrote in conjunction with this Maimer, Yehiratzon Shetifel, you have the desired effect. The Rebbe gave out this Maimer together with $2 and a piece of lekach. If you remember, in Tafshin and Beis, the Rebbe gave lekach 4 times. You got Erev Yom Kippur, and then there were twice more that we got lekach. I think Chanukah was one of them, and maybe the other one was Chav Shvat. But the Rebbe gave lekach 4 times, 3 times beyond the normal. And the Rebbe Vashtetzach gave an explanation. Ki lekach tev nasati lechem teirasi al ta'azevu. That when I'm in a pnimius, like the little kid who goes to cheder, that he licks the honey, and this is the Yosef HaTorah, and so on. The Rebbe spoke about why he's giving lekach. This kuntris was unusual in another way as well. When the Rebbe gave out the kuntris, it was clear that he wanted to give as many of them away as possible. And you saw it in the fact that when the Rebbe walked out of the shul, he stopped several times to give more. He stopped in the middle of the shul. People came in pushed it late. It was after 10 o'clock. I was in shul. I remember when the Rebbe finished giving the kuntris, I was in 770 then. People were running in and they just missed the Rebbe. The Rebbe was halfway out. The Rebbe stopped. And Rabbi Gronos, oh, shalom. I don't mean to laugh, chas v'shalom. It's just hard to say, Allah shalom, about label. It was there, and he would give the Rebbe more, and the Rebbe gave a bunch more. And the Verstetzach, an Eilam was gekommen, people came, so the Rebbe gave everybody. Then they went to the back of the shul, and the same thing happened again. And the way I understand it, when the Rebbe came upstairs, it happened the third time. The Rebbe gave out over 10,000 kudresim of the Maimah V'yata Tetzaveh. And of course, 2 weeks later was the stroke Le'aleinu. Now, just like Benegeh to Yud Shvat, the Maimer of Bossi Lagani was claimed, was supposedly, was allegedly, was presumably given out for a different reason. But when the Inyan of Yud Shvat occurred, the Rebbe explained the Maimer of Bossi Lagani the way the Rebbe explained the Maimer. So it's accepted by Hasidim that the same applies to the Maimah V'yata Tetzaveh. That even though officially it's a Maimah of Purim Cotton, because of the events that followed by a Rebbe, everything Bechlal in the Eibishter's world is a Hashgacha Pratis. But by Tzadikim, by the Rabbeim, the Nesiim, the Tzadikim Deimim Lobeiram, this is on a whole nother level. And especially by a Rebbe, that a Rebbe is Ibezich HaBalabos, a Rebbe is a Balabos over himself, even in ways that the Chazal say normally people are not balabatim over themselves, like the Rebbe brings in the Maimer, ein manichem leila adam ad she'etzav es beisei. And nevertheless, the Rebbe said, benegeh to Yitrat, benegeh to Beis Nissen, that it happened b'ritzena matev. Nothing happens in the life of the Rebbe without his haskama. The Gemara says about David HaMelech, that ein magal leila adam ite yismanei. There's madreges in this. So for sure, everything that happens by a Rebbe is not just b'hashgacha pratis, but it's b'hashgachas ha-Rebbe. So this Maimer is the Maimer that we learn in conjunction with Gimel Tammuz. And the word is aber azoi. If you look at the Maimer of Yud Shvat, everybody knows that Yud Shvat is the Maimer of the 7th generation. But the Maimer of Yud Shvat is the Maimer of the 7th generation because of what the Rebbe did with the Maimer. If the Maimer of Yud Shvat had not been explained and elaborated upon and repeatedly discussed by the Rebbe, hundreds of times, it would be a Maimer like any other Maimer. The Maimer is special because the Rebbe showed how it's special, or the Rebbe made it special. The Maimer V'yata Tetzaveh, as the Rebbe said once in one of the Siches, it's not Neflois Harenu, it's Harenu Neflois. Nobody has to show you how this Maimer is extraordinary. Nobody has to show you how this Maimer is unusual. No Maimer has to show you how this Maimer is negeh to us now. V'chuli, it's self-explanatory. The Maimer Parshat speaks for itself. Mamish. And you see clearly the Lashon that the Rebbe used benegeh to Bossi Lagan, that it's a tzava. There is no question. Believe Sofik Esfek Sveke B'Shum Panim Ba'elam, that the Maimer of Va'ata Tetzaveh, this is the tzava. So every year Gimel Tammuz we learn it. Every year now, I hate to say it, it's 26 Gimel Tammuz. Every year Gimel Tammuz, Kocht man sich in the Maimer V'ata Tetzaveh. We always learn it and we review it. And of course, the Maimer V'ata Tetzaveh is one of those Maimarim that the more times you learn it, the more you see Hafachba, the Keleba. You always surprised that there's still more Chedushim to find that you didn't know from the time before. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're learning Maimer V'ata Tetzaveh. So I'm going to give you the Hakdama, wie man sagt. The Hakdama to the Maimer. The Hakdama to the Maimer is the following. Now remember, the Rebbe gave out the Maimer in Oder. Oder is 5 months away from Tammuz. So of course the Maimer begins V'ata Tetzaveh. Why does the Maimer begin V'ata Tetzaveh? Why does the Maimer begin V'ata Tetzaveh? The Maimer begins Vata Tetzava because in Pashas Tetzava, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned. In Pashas Tetzava, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu's name never mentioned in Pashas Tetzava? So it says in Sfarim, because Moshe Rabbeinu told the Eibishter, Im tisa chatosam v'im ayin mechenino misifr chashek. If you forgive the Jewish people, is good. Otherwise, erase me, take me out of the Sefer Torah. And of course, the Eibishter told the Mia Shachatolim Chana Misifri, Hashem Va'ata Lech Nechesam, Hashem forgave the Jewish people. Pana Yelechu V'anechesi Lach, the Eibishter forgave the Jewish people legamre. But the Chazal say that when a tzaddik says something that's good or not good, even al tnai, even if it's conditional, it's oiser oishim, like I have in Pashas Shmois, when I get to Arna Achicha Yalevi. So, Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eibishter conditionally, Im tisa chatos, if you give the Jewish people is good, otherwise take my name out of the Sefer Torah. And of course the Eibishter did forgive the Yidden. Nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu's words left a trace, they left a mark, and the mark is that in one Pasha, in the entire Sefer Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned. And from Pashas Shmois, that Parsha is Pashas Tetzaveh. So the question becomes, what's up with Pashas Tetzaveh? Why this Parsha? So the base of the Darshonim say a very sweet pshat. I don't know if it's an oizgehaltene pshat, but it's a geschmacke pshat. The Darshonim say a word that Moshe told the Eibishter to take my name out of the Sefer Torah. Which Pasha is that in? That's Pashas Kisisa. Yeah. So Hashem, Kvayochel, strokes his beard and says, should I take Moshe Rabbeinu in Pashas Kisisa? He says, nah, let's wait till next week. The Eibishter would rather not do it. He said, wait till Vayakel. Comes to Pashas Vayakel, and Kvayochel, the Eibishter strokes his beard. Should I take the Moshe Rabbeinu's name in Pashas Vayakel? Nah, let's wait for Pekudei. When it comes to Pekudei, the Eibishter again says, should I take Moshe Rabbeinu's name out of Pekudei? Let's wait for Vayikra. And he keeps pushing it off until there's no place to push it off. The whole Torah comes around completely. You come back to Pashas Tetzaveh. The next one is Vayikra Kisisa. And the Eibishter already said in Pashas Kisisa he's not taking Moshe Rabbeinu's name. So the Eibishter, by delaying, by pushing off, when he was going to remove Moshe's name from the Torah, it is geblieben in Pashas Tetzaveh because it's the last Parsha after Kisisa if you go around in a circle. That's a word, hab's gehört von Yidden. But there's a much, much deeper word which you have in the Rebbe Sichos and Lakuta Sichos, which is a very, very fire-dik word. Bemis. It's be'emes a fire-dik word. And that is that Zayin, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in Pashas Tetzaveh because Pashas Tetzaveh is always Zayin Oder, which is Moshe Rabbeinu's Yartzat, Moshe Rabbeinu's birth. And of course, when it's a Shnasa Iber, when it's an Iber year, when it's a leap year, Zayin Oder Rishon is connected to Pashas Tetzaveh always, and we know that when it comes to the Yom of Avelos, we commemorate the first Adar more than the second Adar. So the Rebbe says, do you know why Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in Pashas Tetzaveh? Not for the reason that we gave because of Mechenina, because Moshe Rabbeinu passes away Zayin Adar, and because Moshe Rabbeinu passes away Zayin Adar, his name is not in the Torah. Now wait. Hagufa. So right away you're going to say Shema Toimer, that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in Pashas Tetzaveh. Why not? Because Moshe passes away. That means it's a negative thing. Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not in the Torah. Why? Because he had gefelt, as they say in Yiddish. He was nedar. His physical presence was missing. So it's not a good thing. So the Rebbe, no, that's not the pshat. If the pshat is not that in Pashas Tetzaveh Moshe Rabbeinu's name isn't mentioned because he passes away, because Moshe is nedar, so what would possibly be the pshat? And there's a good and a simple teretz. But it says in Heilige Sfarb, it says in Tanya, in the Baal Shem Tov, and the Mezritcher Magid, that we learned at Nachitas a little while ago, that Shmoya Shayikele B'Lashon HaKodesh, the name of a person, has to do with the Yetzim of the person. The name of a person, the Hebrew name of a person, Moshe, Avraham, Chaim, Yosef, Berel, Yosel, Moshe, have to do with the chayes of the person. The chayes of the person is connected to their Hebrew name. However, when you say that the chayes of the person is connected to the Hebrew name, you mean the chayis of the neshama, which has a connection to the guf. If you learn the Maimor Man Shemis, it's the most atzmius dike levush of the kish neshama b'chup. It's the deepest garment of the way the neshama has a connection to a body. Neshamas and Gan Eden don't have names. V'harayeh, you can have one neshama that's mizgalgal, kama piyamim, it has different names. Like Moshe Rabbeinu is Hevel, Moshe Rabbeinu is Iev, Moshe Rabbeinu is B'Shem Bayechoy, and Noch. They're not. If Hevel and Moshe the same neshama, they should have the same name. If Moshe and Iev is the same neshama, they should have the same name. And the teretz is taka the same neshama, but the name is not about the neshama as it is by itself. The name is about the neshama, where the shaykhs to the guf, and that changes from Gilgal to Gilgal. So the vart that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned in Parshas Tetzaveh is not because he's missing, but because he's above the madrega of a name. You're talking about, so to speak, the etzem of Moshe Rabbeinu, the way he's bichlal above having a shaykhs to a guf. So when Mele doesn't have a name, the only name by which you could call him is Va'ata. So if you think about the hashgocha, that the Maimed that we learn in conjunction with Gimel Tammuz has the same theme of Moshe Rabbeinu and Zayin, that alone is staggering. That alone is incredible. Just to think that the Rebbe gave out a Maimed Noder, and it's again Tammuz, and the Nekude is so constant, is so consistent with the Indian wegen welche wir reden, about the issue which we're discussing. And this is one of the ideas that we speak about when you talk about the Maimed V'ata Tetzaveh, is that the V'ata Tetzaveh is in Parshas Tetzaveh, because there's talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, the way he's above the Inyan Hashem, the way he's higher than the Inyan of a name. So the Parsha begins with the word V'ata. Hashem is talking to Moshe Rabbeinu, not in third person, V'yitaber Hashem Moshe Leimer, but V'yat in second person. You. Hashem speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, you, Ata. And you probably know the Chassidus, that when you call you is higher than Hashem's name, than a name. You is second person, is higher than the name of Moshe, or Aaron, or Yosef, or Chaim, and so on. So we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu the way he's in a Maimed U'Matzev, where he's higher than a name. That's the V'ata Tetzaveh. So Parshas Tetzaveh is connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, Zayin Oder. And Derech Agav, I don't know if you know this, that in Tafshin Nun Beis, the Rebbe said a Siche, it's Muge, Taka Parshas Tetzaveh, where the Teuchen of the Fabrengen was connected to Zayin Oder. The Rebbe spoke about the of Zayin Oder. And what he said, that Zayin Oder is the birthday of every single Jew who ever lived. Why? Because Zayin Oder is the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe Rabbeinu is the Nasi Hu Akel. But Moshe Rabbeinu is not only the Nasi Hu Akel, he's the Nasi of all the Nasiim. He's the Reish to all the Rosh Bnei Yisrael. He's the first. So Zayin Oder is the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's the birthday of all the Rabbeim, the Nasiim that come after him. Says the Rebbe, so b'meile, it's the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, it's the birthday of all the Neshamas Pratias that come from his Neshama Klolis. And if it's the birthday of all the Neshamas Klolias that come after Moshe Rabbeinu, because they're all nitzutze, vestach, what's the Lashon? It's pashtusa, the Moshe, b'chaldor of a daughter, ein der, shein beka Moshe. So it's the Yemaletus of every Rebbe till Mashiach comes. So b'meile, it's the birthday of all the Neshamas Pratias, the nitzutzim, and so on and so forth, which are connected to the Nesiya Yisrael. So V'ata Tetzaveh, Zayin Oder is the birthday of every Jew. And this is, by the way, one of the ways of explaining why we say that the mazel of Yidden and Oder is positive, because it's Mazla Gever, it's the birthday of every single Jew is Chedesh Oder. In other words, it's not that because it's a mazel, that's why we were born. Because we were born, that's why it's a mazel of Yidden that's good. And what's the Teuchen of V'ata Tetzaveh? In other words, now that we established that this parsha and this pasuk has to do with Moshe Rabbeinu, and specifically with the inyan of the histalkus of Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to ask yourself, what's the teuchen of the parsha? What is V'ata Tetzaveh about? And you'll see how it all fits together exact, perfect. The teuchen of the pasuk, V'ata Tetzaveh, is a Hilchis Rebbe. The laws of a Rebbe are the first two psukim of Parshas Tetzaveh. There's a klal godel, right? There's a rule in Torah and in Yiddishkeit that leke mide de leide mizi be'eraisa. There is nothing in Jewish life that's not in the Torah. So you have inyanim in Torah that speaks to all Jews, all times, all places, like tefillin, like mezuzah. You have inyanim in Torah that speak to some Jews, sometimes, some places, like laws of Metera, like the laws of Steachuza or Kachim and Taris, some of them. And then you have laws in Torah which speak on rare occasion, like speaking to a melech, or speaking to a kohen gadol. There's a whole parsha in Chumash which speaks to a melech. There's several parshas in Chumash which speaks to kohenim and to kohen gadol, because Hashem speaks to everybody. The Torah teaches us Hirah B'chaim in all aspects, things that are negeya to the hamoyin, to everybody, as well as things that are negeya to yechidim. Where in Chumash do you have the halachas of Yizdaf Tzachfir and Nasi B'Yisrael? Where in Chumash do you have the rules about Nasi Yisrael, about a Rebbe, about a Nasi B'Yisrael? Now, of course, you know that Nasi is a halachic term, but we mean Nasi not just as a halachic term, but as a pnimiyas term. But Nasi goes on the Eibush, on the Melech, like it says in Pasuk, that Asher Nasi Yechta, and the idea of a Nasi, the idea of a Melech, the Rambam writes, is that he's a Libon, shall call Yisrael, he's the heart of the whole Jewish people, as they state in Rambam. So the Melech, who's Libon, shall call Yisrael, is a political leader, and he's a civil leader, a Sach Zachen. But as a Nasi, he's a Pnimiyas leader. And the Shail is, where in Torah does the Torah speak to the Pnimiyas halachas of a Nasi B'Yisrael? And the answer is the first Psuk, Vata Tetzava. And it's exact. Since Vata Tetzava speaks of Moshe Rabbeinu, the way Moshe Rabbeinu stands in a level where he's above a name, the best place in the Torah for the Torah to discuss what is the inyan of a Rebbe is in the beginning of this week's this parsha, Parshat Vata Tetzava. And now comes this is so to speak, this is Ad Kan Hagdome, wie man sagt. These are the Baal Peh, the Hagdome Zach. I want to say one more thing, and then we're actually going to start learning now, Bli Neder, okay? And the one more thing that I want to say is the following. This Maimon starts with 4 questions, 5 questions. But there's an unwritten question. There's a question in this Maimon which the Rebbe doesn't ask, B'dibur, but it's really Ikir Kala Ikir. It's the Ikir Shatz, the most important Shaila. And that is that the Parsha of Ata Tetzaveh is repeated in the Chumash twice, almost word for word. The Parsha of Ata Tetzaveh is repeated in the Chumash twice, almost word for word. The second time is in Parshas Emer, in the Sefer Vayikra, and it says, "Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemer." Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, "Tzaves b'nei Yisrael, tell the Jewish people, v'yikru elech Hashem en zayizach kosas lamol lahalas ner tamid, be'eyel made mechutz lapareches yarech esi ar navon of me'erev ad begir chugazel m'deriseyim." In Parshas Emer, you almost have word for word the same Parsha at the beginning of Ata Tetzaveh. The biggest difference is that in Parshas Emer it says the typical form. Hashem speaks to Moshe Rabbeinu, Leimer. What's meant Leimer? To repeat. Ibit is arguing that Moshe Rabbeinu should repeat it to others. Then it says, it doesn't say Tetzaveh, it says Tzav. Tzav is b'nei Yisrael, v'yicholech Hashem and Zayizach, and so on. Our Parsha does not begin Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Leimer, because Moshe Rabbeinu's name is never mentioned. It begins with V'yata. But aside from that, it's verbatim. V'ata Tetzav is b'nei Yisrael, v'yicholech Hashem and Zayizach, kosas lamor lahalas ner tamid. So you have a klotz kasha. A yeshivish akasha, an elementary question. The question is, why does the Torah tell us exactly the same thing twice? The same exact parsha. You have twice in the Torah. In Parshas Tetzaveh, you have the mitzvah of Shemen. And in Parshas Amir, you have the mitzvah of Shemen a second time. Why does the Torah repeat exactly, mamish, the same thing, almost word for word, twice in the Chumash? Now the Bnei Torah, the Lomdim, can tell you that Vestach Nishnis, the teachers that you're very many, as Leisa says, or many Asays, Vestach, all kinds of limudim, halachak limudim. Rashi has this kasha. Rashi, Pshutei Shal Mikra, has this kasha. But Rashi doesn't ask the kasha in our Pasha, Pashas Tetzaveh. Because in Pashas Tetzaveh there's no kasha. When something is mentioned for the first time, you don't have a kasha, it only becomes a kasha when it's mentioned for the second time. But in Pashas Emer, Rashi asks, I don't understand. Why does the Torah say now the Pashas Hashemen, where the Pashas Hashemen, the beginning of Pashas Tetzaveh? And Rashi gives a very funny answer. In Pshutei Shal Mikra, it's an adequate answer. but in Pnimis Hanyanim it's quite inadequate. Again, Rashi's kasha is, and it's asked in Emir, not in Tetzara. Why do you have the same pasha repeated twice? So Rashi says like this: the mitzvah of Shemin, the commandment that Yidden should prepare oil, the menera, is in Pashas Emir, not in Pashas Tetzaveh. What's Pashas Tetzaveh? It is simply a sipur dvarim. Pashas Tetzaveh is simply telling us what he's going to tell us. Since in the beginning of Pashas Truma, Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu that Yidden should take Yud Gimel Tezvav Dvarim, Zahav, Kesef, and Acheshes, Cheles, Agomot, Lashani, Sheish, Eres, Elim Adomim, Eres Choshem, Azichem, Amor, Besamim, Avnei Shem, Avnei Elohim. There's a whole bunch of materials necessary to build the Beis HaMikdash. So the Torah tells us what to do with them. So many of them, the Torah says what we actually made from them. Some of them, the Torah says, V'yata tetzaveh, you will command. Since one of the 15 or 13 things is Shemen Lamoyer, so the Eibishter tells us in the beginning of Pashas Tetzaveh, he's not telling us to prepare the oil, he's telling us that he's gonna tell us to prepare the oil. And in Rashi, Pshute Shel Mikra, that's a sufficient teretz. That Pashas Emer, Hashem teaches us the mitzvah of preparing the Shem and the oil for the Menera. And Pashas Tetzaveh is telling us this is why they had oil, because they needed it for the Menera. That's Rashi's teretz. But of course, Chassidus has the same kashas, often, but different terutzim. So Chassidus also has this kasha, but a very different teretz. The kasha is, this is the unspoken kasha in the Maimer. Why does the Pashas Hashemen get repeated twice in the Chumash? Once in the beginning of Pashas Tetzaveh, which is the Pasha of the Stalkos of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu stands higher than a name, v'choli v'choli, and then again in Pashas Hameir. And the teretz is because in Pashas Tetzaveh the Eibush is not talking about Shemen at all. In Pashas Tetzaveh the Eibush is talking about Moshe. And like I like to call it, it's called Hilchas Rebbe. We're in Chumash, we're in Teresh Beksad, you have the halachas of Viyas Tafsachfina Rebbe Anasi B'Yisrael. The answer is the first few psukim of our Pash. So the same kasha of Rashi, but a very different teretz. Why does the Torah repeat twice the mitzvah of Shemen? The answer is the second time is teaching us how to prepare Shemen the Menera, Shemen the Moed. And the first time, it's teaching us that you have to take Shemen, that Moshe Rabbeinu has to wake up Yiddish and Neshamas, V'ata Tetzaveh. And of course, the raya to this, the diak for this is the Shini Loshen, is a change in form. The Be'oth, it says V'ata Tetzaveh, and in Pashas Hameir it says Tzav. What's the difference between V'yata Tetzaveh and Tzav? So the Rebbe is going to say in the first lines of this Maimer, Tzav means that Moshe should repeat Hashem's words. Moshe Rabbeinu's role is as a mashpech, as a taker and as a giver. The Eibusha gave him the mitzvahs, Moshe repeats them to us, and that's his role. But Tetzaveh means not that Moshe should tell us what to do, but that Moshe is being told in Yanei Shel Moshe Rabbeinu. The Eibusha is telling Moshe Rabbeinu what's Moshe Rabbeinu's in. And this Rabbi Isai is the first and most important kasha in the Maimer. It's the Yesoid Moised, it's the foundation of the Maimer in its entirety. And the Maimer doesn't ask it, but the Maimer certainly answers it. The kasha again. Why do you have to have mitzvah Hashem repeated in the Torah almost word for word twice? And the teretz is because the first time it's not talking about Shemen, it's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. V'yata Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu has to connect Yidden to the Meibish. Pashas Hashemen is the second time. Ad kan hakdom. This is the end of the introduction to the Maimer. Okay? So I'll tell you what, a few chavris, not a lot of people, if someone wants to make a comment or ask a question, go ahead, I'll try to answer. Anishat mamshach zayin nevenik. Okay, Moirav and Aboisai, we're going to start the Maimer now. Okay, let me just bring you back to your screen. I should be able to see you. Okay, so we're starting to learn inside. We're starting to learn inside the Maimed, okay? Ve'ata Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael. Hashem is talking to Moshe Rabbeinu. And he says to him, you should command the Jewish people. Ve'yikru alecha, they should bring to you, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Shemen Zayis, olive oil, Zoch, which is pure. Kosis, that has been produced, not by putting the olives into a grinder or by pressing on them with your feet, but by putting them into a press where you give a zetz and a little bit of oil comes out. Lamoyer, that it should be a source for light. Lahales ner tomid, that the candle which is called tomid, tomid means always, day and night is the same, should burn. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu that he should command the Jewish people, they should bring to him Shemen Zayis Achas Lamar. So the Rebbe begins and he says, we all know the famous kashas on this pasuk, again, besides for the kasha and teretz, which I already told you, which is not explicit in the Maimed, but it's very implicit in the Maimed. What is the meaning of these two psukim? They're repeated verbatim in Pashas Emer. And the teretz says that these psukim in the beginning of Pashas Tetzaveh are the laws of a Rebbe. In addition to this question and this answer, there are more questions. We all know the nuance. As a rule, when the Torah gives commands, the standard nusach is tzav, to command, daber and meir tzav. Here it's written that you should do the act of tetzaveh, es b'nei Yisrael. Now, of course, we know why it says this lashon, because since it doesn't want to say Moshe Rabbeinu's name, so the Torah has to be written in second person rather than in third person. So it cannot say what would normally be written, it therefore has no choice but to say, Va'ata, and you Tetzaveh have to unzang b'foilin, command the Jewish people. However, says the Rebbe, Yosef, I want you to know that this question about the Shinu Loshen Tetzaveh, as they say in Yiddish, ken man nicht wegmachen, you can't just push it aside by saying that the Shini Loshen has to do with the fact that Moshe's name is not mentioned. No, it's not good enough. Why not? Because the Diog Mashakos of Vata Tetzaveh, when the Rebbe asks the Kasha about the word Vata Tetzaveh, it's Leirak B'Haloshen. It doesn't only affect the words, the meaning is different. How is it different? The Loshen V'Ata Tetzaveh Mashma, the words you should do Tetzaveh, indicates Shem Moshe Hu HaMatzav, that Moshe Rabbeinu was the one doing the act. B'tzarech love in the kasha is Hari Moshe shliach. Moshe is not doing anything; he's simply a shliach. Limse Yisrael Sivi HaKadosh Baruch, to give over to the Jewish people the Eibishter's command. Why is it Vata Tetzaveh? All over the Torah, Moshe is a communicator. A communicator means like a meturgaman. Hashem speaks to Moshe, Moshe repeats to us. V'yata Tetzaveh is not Moshe acting as a meturgaman. V'yata Tetzaveh is Moshe's shlichus. V'ata tetzaveh, your inyan is tetzaveh. And that's the kasha. It's not just a shina in loshen, in the language, tetzaveh versus tzav, it's a shina in teichen. Moshe is not just sending us a message, Moshe is doing his shlichus, which is the inyan of tetzaveh, and the Rebbe wants to know what that is. That's the first kasha in the Maimed. Gam tzarech lov, the second question is, mashakos v'ikhoy lecha, that the olive that they brought to Moshe Rabbeinu, and the kasha is aposheter. Shaviu Hashem and Lameshe Lechad also brought the Moshe Rabbeinu. The kasha is the Lechaeda. Ki van shalos on there is how he said the Aaron. The Meneda was lit by Aaron Akayin, not by Moshe Rabbeinu, by Pashtus. Lo muhutzach lo vis Hashem and Lameshe. Why bring the Shem into Moshe Rabbeinu if Aaron is going to light it? That's the second kasha. Gam tzarech lov, in the third kasha is mashakos of Shem and Kosis v'geimel amoed, that the oil has to be used after being crushed. The olive has to be crushed, and the oil has to be extracted. To lamor, to be a source for light. It shouldn't say shem and oil, lamor. To be a source for light, it should be shem and lahoir, oil which produces light. And that's the third question. Gam tzarech, and the fourth kasha is, the next pasuk says, Me'erevad Beker, that the meneda burned from night until morning. V'kan nemar, and here it says, Lahalis near Tomid, the candle burns Tomid. So Amoid and Kasha was the Meneda only at night, it was the Meneda Tomid. That's the Kasha. Now, Derech Agav, it's Yadua in Lubavitch, that the Rebbe has what's called Rishimas HaMeneira. The Rebbe wrote a whole essay on the Meneira. And one of the most important aspects of the Rishimas HaMeneira is to explain a machlekes between the Rambam and the other Rishonim, which is based on Rabbi Elazar ben Yankov and other Tanoim. And that is, was the Meneira in the Beis HaMikdash only lit at night, or was it lit by night and by day? Most people hold that the Meneira was lit only by night, from night till morning. The Rambam's hold was Sai by night and Sai by day. In other words, some people hold that the Meneira was burnt Me'erev ad Beker. The Rambam holds Tomid. Pasha 2 days in Aloch. Now, I don't think these 2 days are based on the Psukim. Right? This is Stam and Asmachta. But the Rebbe wants to know the Chassidus. What's the Chassidus of that opinion who says that the Meneira only burns when it's dark, Me'erev ad Beker? And what's the Chassidus of the opinion that says that it's Tamid? What's the Chassidus? So you have 4 questions, plus the one I told you. The one I added was what? Why is the Pashas Hashem repeated twice? And the answer is because over here it's not talking about oil, it's talking about Mesha. The second kasha is the word Tetzava is saying to Mesha Rabbeinu, what's his job? What does Tetzava mean? The third kasha is why I say V'yichoi lach, I have to bring the Shem into Mesha Rabbeinu of Ad and lighting the Meneira. The fourth question is Lamoid, and the fifth question is the discrepancy between Neir Tomid and Me'erev ad Beker. Okay? And the Rebbe says in Perek Beis, Umavayir, Kfei Kedushas, Meir V'chami Admor, the Frierdiker Rebbe explains. B'mamor, how you doing the famous man B'kibel, I heard him Shenemar, B'kpurim, Cotton, Taf, Reish Bezayin. The Frierdiker Rebbe went to Moscow to meet an American Jew. His name was Rosen, Dr. Rosen. He was a representative of the joint who lived permanently in Russia. And he helped the Rebbe Lubavitch a lot. He gave the Rebbe thousands of dollars under very difficult conditions. And this Dr. Rosen, the Frierdiker Rebbe, in his Rishimis calls him Shoishan, or Shoishana, that was his code name, had to meet the Frierdiker Rebbe in Moscow. The Rebbe was living in Leningrad, to discuss finances, how much money was going to give the Frierdiker Rebbe. The trip was very dangerous. Kol hadracha b'cheska sakona. When it came to Moscow, the whole story. He took one hotel room, then took a second hotel. He was running back and forth from one hotel to the next. But people, the Yidden heard that the Rebbe is in Moscow. At that time, being a Frumme Yid was a Yifam B'kuach Nefesh B'poyel. The Chassidim came, and the Yidden came and asked the Rebbe to say something to them. The Rebbe said, I couldn't refuse them. So he went to the Lubavitcher Shul in Moscow, which is packed to overflowing. People were out in the street. They say that the Rebbe's voice was so loud you could hear him in the street. And he said the Maimah V'Kibel HaYehudim. This Maimah V'Kibel HaYehudim is about Mesiras Nefesh, about Mordechai and the children, and Tenekeh Shel Beis Rabban, and so on. Here's what's interesting about it. The Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimah V'Kibel HaYehudim for Taf Reish Pei Zayin is based on a Maimah from the Rebbe Rashab from 8 years before, from Taf Reish Ayin Tes. If you look in the Maimah of the Rebbe Rashab from Taf Reish Ayin Tes, you know the Maimah starts. V'yata Tetzava. The Rebbe Rashab has a Maimah V'ata Tetzava. And in the middle of the Maimah, he says, Allah Haven Zeyesh L'Hagdim Tchila Masher Kosov V'Kibel HaYehudim. The Frierdiker Rebbe turned it around. He moved V'ata Tetzava from the beginning to the middle. And he moved the V'Kibel HaYehudim to the front. The Rebbe, our Rebbe, took the Frierdiker Rebbe. The Rebbe said this Maimah maybe half a dozen times. And he turned it back around. Even though the Frierdiker Rebbe said V'Kibel HaYehudim, the Rebbe said V'ata Tetzava like the Rebbe Rashab said. Okay, V'ein kan amokim laharich bezeh. Says the Rebbe, what's the Frierdiker Rebbe says in his Maimah? That Tetzava is Tzavsa V'chibur. V'ata Tetzava doesn't mean you should instruct. V'ata Tetzava means you should connect. Tzavsa means to be next to, to be near. And Chibur means to be bound. V'zehu, and this is the pshat in the pasuk, V'ata Tetzava is B'nei Yisrael, that Moshe has to be Tetzava is B'nei Yisrael. And here comes the quotable quote. Moshe hu Mekasher hu Mechaber as B'nei Yisrael Me'erin Seif. Moshe Rabbeinu ties and binds the B'nei Yisrael Me'erin Seif. These words, Moshe Mekasher Mechaber as B'nei Yisrael Me'erin Seif, is the first key to this Maimah. Okay? Moshe, remember these words. Moshe Mekasher Mechaber es B'nei Yisrael Me'erin Seif is the first code. On the next page, the code is going to change. It's going to change to Zon u'Mefanes es Yisrael Binyan ha'emunah, that he nourishes and provides mezenis and parnasa for Yidden in matters of emunah. A little bit later in the Maimah, that's going to be changed again. Zon u'Mefanes es ha'emunah atzma. These three expressions are the key to understanding the Maimah. The beginning of the Maimah, V'ata Tetzava, what is the meaning of V'ata Tetzava? That Moshe Rabbeinu is Mekasher or Mechaber, he ties and connects B'nei Yisrael in Me'erin Seif. Now, With that word, you answered the first two questions. First of all, the question which is not written here, how come the Pasha of Hashem is written twice? The answer is because Moshe Rabbeinu's inyan to connect Yidden to the Eibishter. And second of all, the Shini Loshen Tetzaveh. Tetzaveh doesn't mean you should instruct. Tetzaveh means that it's Moshe Rabbeinu's inyan to fulfill the inyan of Tetzaveh. Teaches the Rebbe, you know what Tetzaveh means? Moshe Rabbeinu's job is to connect Yidden to the Eibishter. Or to say it in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu's job is not to teach a Blat Gemara or my Mercedes, even though he does that. Moshe Rabbeinu's job is to touch a Yiddish neshama. Moshe Rabbeinu is a neshama Yid. And Kol Inyoni o Matarose is to wake up Yiddish neshamas. And by waking up Yiddish neshamas, he's Makasher or Mechabes al Meintef. That's touched in the Pasuk. V'yata Tetzaveh, you should connect Yidden with the Eibishter. V'yadesha Moshe Mashpia li Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu becomes a Mashpia to Yidden V'yata Tetzaveh. Shemakasha Eisam Amerin Seif, he connects into the Yidin Seif. Ayadeze Nasa Yisrin Veisafa Moshe. Moshe has an Aliyah also. Moshe does a good thing and he gets a schar. Right? Amanasa Kabba Pras. Because Moshe V'Yisrael have Dugmas Reish V'Regel Moshe and Yidna like a head and feet. Like it says in the Pasuk Sheish, Meisal V'Ragla Moshe Nechi B'Kirbi, Moshe Rabbeinu's a Madrega V'Nechi. And all the Yidna around him are Madrega V'Regel, relative to Moshe Rabbeinu's Madrega. Moshe is the head. Just like when it comes to a person, the feet are much lower than the head in every way. Nevertheless, the feet can carry the head. Come to a place. The head by itself can't go there. The same is to Moshe Rabbeinu and Yidden. That Moshe Rabbeinu connects Yidden to the Meibish and V'ata Tetzaveh, and then Moshe gets a schus, a schar. What is that? Yisrael through Yidden. Haraglayim, the Moshe, the feet of Moshe Rabbeinu, Mitesef Ilu b'Moshe, Moshe has an Aliyah. Zeo Masha Kosev, which is the answer to the third question, where it says, V'yichwelech Hashem in Zayis, that Yidden have to bring to Moshe Rabbeinu Shem and Zayis. And the kasha was, why was the Shem and Zayis brought to Moshe Rabbeinu? It should have been brought to Aaron HaKohen because it has to light the Meneda. And the teretz is because Aidezeh Yaviyu B'nei Yisrael Shem and Zayis LaMoshe, when Moshe Rabbeinu connects Yidden to the Meibish. The idea, I'll read it in such a day, Shem Moshe Yitzhak V'Kasha as B'nei Yisrael LaMoshe, said Moshe Rabbeinu fulfilling his mission to connect Yidden to the Meibish. And Aidezeh Yaviyu B'nei Yisrael LaMoshe. Shem Zayis Lamesha, you didn't bring Shem Zayis Lamesha. In other words, she Yisif or Taisus Ebe Mesha. Moshe Rabbeinu gets an Aliyah. This is the answer to the third kasha. Moshe connects Yidden to the Meibishten, and Moshe benefits. Moshe has an Aliyah. Classic Amanas L'Kabel Pras. Moshe does a good thing, helps us, and he gets something bad. Now, any child would jump on this and say, Moshe does things, Amanas L'Kabel Pras. Moshe does things for ulterior motivations. Amanas L'Kabel Pras doesn't make sense. But as the Maimer stands right now, the Ve'ata Tetzaveh and the V'yikoilach are separate. Moshe connects it to the Meibish, that's Aleph. Moshe has an Aliyah, V'yikoilach Hashem and Zayin Zoch, that's Beis, and they're separate. And one of the journeys of this Maimer from the beginning to the end, that in the beginning, Moshe V'yata Tetzaveh, V'yikoilach are two separate things, which means Moshe Rabbeinu is doing a mitzvah. Amanas L'Kabel Pras. The whole Vart in Perek Yud Aleph is going to be that the V'yikoilach is part of V'yata Tetzaveh. What the Aliyah that Moshe Rabbeinu has is not separate, but it's one with the idea that Moshe connects to the Meibish. Okay, it's one of the ways of looking at this Maimer, is the difference between how we understand V'yata Tetzaveh, V'yikoilach in the beginning, and how we understand V'ata Tetzaveh V'yikoilach in the end, as you'll see in Mirza Hashem in the future Shiur. Okay? Thank you for being here and for listening, and I'll see you tomorrow in Mirza Hashem. We want Mashiach now.